Welcome back to the Energy Innovation Days 2021. And for our next session, I'm not going to lie, I've been looking forward to meeting our next speaker for a long time. And that is because he is a fellow German in Silicon Valley. So joining us from Palo Alto today. But let me say a few things about him. The magazine Focus calls him the Pope of Creativity. He's founding faculty of the Google School for Leaders and among the top 10 most influential Germans in Silicon Valley. Obviously a title I'm still working on myself still. Welcome, Frederick. Can you hear us?
Hello, friends.
How are you doing? How is Palo Alto?
Super excited to be with you today and actually spend the night with you. It's now 2:15 a.m. local time here in California.
Oh my God.
And as you can see, it's still dark outside and my 3 kids and my wife are still asleep. So excited to share some thoughts and ideas with you. And I'm very humbled actually to join you today.
Thanks so much. Let me just introduce your session real quick and now we jump right into it. So our next speaker is on a mission to grow an innovation mindset in everyone. He's going to talk about inventing tomorrow, today. He is the Chief Innovation Evangelist at Google and an Adjunct Professor at Stanford University. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Frederick Fair.
Fantastic. Again, hello, friends, and I'm very happy to be with you today and spend the night with you. Again, it's 2:15 to 16 a.m. in the morning, local time here. Still dark outside, and I'm super excited to talk to passionate people and talented people who think about energy, one of the most important topics I think of our times. And I'm joining you here from a geodesic dome in the Santa Cruz Mountains in a little forest just above Silicon Valley. And I still remember the time when we actually created this little geodesic dome. It was on December 1st, 2019, where some friends of mine and family gathered in our backyard to set up a tent. A dome structure, as you can see it here, it's a small tent in size, but with its architecture and resilience, probably can withstand the strongest winds and rain and even snow that we usually don't get here, but who knows what the future will bring. Not knowing that we have anticipated the future a bit, and that only 3 months later, in March 2020, a pandemic will break out, and this little tent can also withstand this pandemic and offer us protection. So this geodesic dome served me from March onwards for far greater things. As a home office from which I can exchange ideas with people all over the world, and as a school for my children, my 3 children, who study here with teachers, but also grandmas and grandpas every week, and even as a yoga and meditation studio for my wife. And so what I want to say with that little story about this geodesic dome is that we can all not predict the future, but we can anticipate it. Even more, we can shape it. How? By training our mindset to be better prepared for the future, and therefore train our attitude towards every challenge that comes our way. And we all know the challenges are not running out and the problems are not running out, definitely currently. And everyone tells you probably that you need to do something different. We all need to do something different. But in order to do something different, we have to be different. We need to think differently and change our mindset. Again, our attitude and how we approach everything that comes our way. And for years, I've been preaching, literally, to people that they can reprogram their mentality. So what is a mindset? It's basically our attitude towards everything that comes our way. And it's precisely this future mentality, this new way of thinking that I would like to train with you here today. And to get us started, let's actually use the chat or comment functionality that all of you who are joining online, so hello and thanks for joining online, And who are in the audience, hello as well. Great to see everyone. Just reflect about this question for a moment. And if you feel comfortable to share in the comment functionality, what's one new thing that you have experimented with and therefore learned in the past 18 months? So what's one thing that you have experimented with and therefore learned in the last 18 months? So just reflect about that question for a moment. And if you feel comfortable, please feel free to use the comment functionality and put that in there as well. For me, I've learned a tremendous amount. We erected another geodesic dome here, a greenhouse, and I turned a little bit into a farmer, and we just harvested our first vegetables the last months, which was a super interesting learning experiment for me. We also built a little schoolhouse here in our forest for our 3 kids, where we try to reimagine education for our children, where everybody had to turn to online education overnight. So many learnings there as well. So please feel free to add your comments in the chat functionality as well. Thanks for doing that. And one of the learnings was leading a remote team, Raspberry Pi. German language. Yes, digital sales, absolutely. We all probably have, shopped online in a very different way. And how valuable personal connection and touch is, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. So we all learned a tremendous amount of things in the past 18 months. And for several years, I've wanted to help thousands of people to break out of their routines, not getting into autopilot mode over and over again, and not always going to the same restaurant or get a new way to work. But this was more likely our reality, as you can see on this slide. We didn't take advantage of our explorer mentality. Most of us were in what I call autopilot mode. We did things, but we did most of them in a similar way without actually changing much around. And many people smiled at me and said, "Hey, we are fine. I like my favorite restaurant. Why should I change something? I like going the same path or same route to work every day." And from exactly these people, I get calls today and they say, "Frederick, you were right. We were not prepared for these changes now. Our thinking was on autopilot." And I think 18 months ago, nature locked us all in our rooms to help us start thinking what we've done in the last probably decades and what we need to do differently in the future. We were all kicked, so to speak, out of our safe place overnight. And aren't these crazy and unprecedented times we all live in? But I believe that it's uncertain times like ours that unleash the best in humanity. And after every crisis, there's even more hope and opportunity. And the world has changed. We all know that. And I think that's good, because I think we've all changed for the better. We've all learned something new. Making pizza at home, like John shares here. Building an energy-efficient home. Wow, that's a fantastic experiment. Thanks for sharing that. Or even learning about quantum computing, as Rodolphe here shares. So overnight, the world looked very different. And so we were teleported into the future. A future in which we were confronted with a different reality. How we live, work, learn, and even play. One future that we were probably not prepared for. And I think we all need to think about that. How were we prepared for this future? How are we ready for this future? As we've all changed overnight. But how do we have changed? again, for myself, became a bit of a gardener and farmer and also a teacher for my children. We built a greenhouse and a schoolhouse here, as I mentioned. And I also improved my cooking skills, like making pizza that was shared here in the chat. But also I've met with thousands of people in the past 18 months, virtually from my little geodesic dome here in the Santa Cruz Mountains, to help people develop an innovative mindset and gain confidence in their creativity. But you probably know best how you have changed and how the world has changed. So I looked at our Google Trends, where we see actually the search queries in real time, and we can look at the search trends over the past years. And you can do that too. If you go to Google Search Trends, you can see actually what were people looking for. It's a tool that is accessible to everyone here, and the trends are available to everyone. So we can look into the past and the present worldwide. And what did we learn? What topics were the world interested in? Was the world interested in? There's some interesting things. Because right after the pandemic started, that March 2020, comfort food may have got us through March, but how to plant a vegetable garden was searched twice as often in 2020 as it was searched in 2019. So some of us became literally farmers like me. Obviously, most searched worldwide in 2020, the number one was coronavirus. Some things that actually haven't changed dramatically. For example, in Germany, in third place, how will the weather be tomorrow? That's what we looked for. But first time top ranking in first place in the when questions category. When will the schools open again? And worldwide, number 3 and number 4 in the how category. How do you make sourdough and pizza? So some of your comments were actually quite spot on. And related to that, number 10, why is there no yeast? And a question we all ask ourselves, or our partners, parents, and children, which was at an all-time high: how do you cut hair? And something we all care more about now: greenhouse gases, rising sea levels, and deforestation and wildfires. Like here, that 1 year ago, they were just 1 mile away from our house here, which we had to evacuate. So in 2020, we all searched more than ever before, how do we stop climate change? Which was a wonderful trend to observe. And another wonderful trend we are seeing, we focused more on helping others than on ourselves. So how to donate was searched twice as often as how to save. And all of these search trends help us to understand the past and how we thought and felt yesterday. But what about tomorrow and the day after tomorrow? So in the next few minutes, I would like to help all of us to develop a future mentality and tap into one of our superhuman powers: imagination. In order not only to be better prepared for tomorrow, but to learn to navigate it better, in order to design a better future, a future with meaning. So our human superpower, imagination, helps us with that. Can you imagine the world of tomorrow? I won't tell you, and actually no one can, how the future will look like in the next 3 years. But I will help you to reprogram your way of thinking so that from today, you can imagine and shape a better future for tomorrow. But what will the world look like tomorrow? What are you looking for? What questions do you ask yourself in the future? So let's try an experiment. Again, let's go into the comment functionality. Thanks for using that already. And imagine 1 year from now in the future. What will you be looking for as a person? What are the search queries you will put in your favorite search engine? What are the questions you are asking yourself in just a year from now? For example, how do I work effectively from anywhere? That could be a question that you will probably ask sooner than later. Or how do I find a new partner? Maybe that's a question you anticipate to ask in a year from now. Or how can I produce less waste? Maybe that's a question you're interested in just a year from now. So try to use the comment functionality and just put the question that you probably will ask in just a year from now yourself. For the people in the audience, feel free to reflect about that question and just think about that question for a moment. What questions will we ask ourselves in just a year? So what are the search trends we're going to see in just a year from now? How to live simpler? How do I speed up our race to net zero? What is truly sustainable? Thanks for all of these comments here that I see you're putting in. So keep them coming. It's fascinating because we're actually trying to shape the future right now. How to make a living out of social activities. For example, helping children, animals, and elderly people. Why is there still no tasty vegan cheese? That's a question you're probably going to ask yourself in a year from now. Will my kids need to be vaccinated? Questions about an eco-village or communities. Fantastic. Thanks for thinking just 1 year out and trying to frame those questions right now using your human superpower, imagination. But some of you might still think, why do I need to change the way we think? In today's rapidly changing world, we don't just have to think differently. Again, we have to be differently. And if you're still not convinced that we need to change the way we think, let's try an experiment. So let's look at this slide over here. And I've given this arithmetic problem to thousands of people over and over again. And in the last few months, I've learned from more and more people that they've actually learned to overcome their negativity bias. So we finally see the 3 correct equations first, because most of us spot the mistake first. The equation that's wrong, and that's okay. But not many of us actually focus on the 75% that are correct, the 3 equations that are correct here. So many still follow our negativity bias, which our brain uses to protect us from danger and recognize that an error occurred in one of the operations. So our brains are actually wired in such a way that we tend to spot the mistakes first, the things that are wrong. And our ability to highlight negative contributions evolves for a really good reason, to help us survive. So since the dawn of human history, our survival has depended on our ability to recognize danger. And our brain has developed systems that make it inevitable not to notice danger, and so hopefully to react to it. So all well and good, but in our modern world, I think, it can no longer serve its purpose. If we use our brains and how sensitive they are to negativity, means that the same negativity bias is at work whenever we have a new idea or want to do something in a new way. Let's call it innovation. So we tend not to take risks and try new things because we focus on the one thing that could go wrong. But people and organizations that really change the world for the better weren't the no-sayers. It's the people who say yes, the optimists. And when was the last time you took a risk and answered, yes, I want to do this? And just think about how did that feel? In other words, the negative people are right, but the optimists tend to succeed and change the world. And how many times have we actually come to see things negatively during the pandemic? And absolutely, there has been and is suffering all over the world. But we can also use positive reframing to be optimistic about things and some of the good things that happened. Again, things that you've learned and put here in your comments. So reframing won't change the situation, but it can provide perspective. We can turn problems into opportunities by simply turning them into a question. And we all know the bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity. So you can choose which group you're part of on this slide. Which group do you belong to currently? Are you part of the group that sees the glass half full or half empty? It's your choice. But how can we live optimism and look better in the future, into the future, through so-called reframing? We can translate our problems into questions. And one of my favorite questions is, what if? And when was the last time you asked a question that made people laugh? And then there was an awkward silence when everybody thought, are you serious? So there's no telling how these what if questions, these future provocations, will turn out in the long run. But they fuel optimism, our optimism, that solutions to the world's major problems always lie within the realm of human imagination. Our brains crave for security and clarity, and most professional environments train us better in providing answers and short-term progress than exploring big questions. But in order to truly find groundbreaking ideas, we have to train ourselves, our way of thinking, to break out of well-trodden mental paths and embrace the uncomfortable process of being guided by questions and experiments. And I want to help you to ask those big questions today. But let me first start sharing some of my favorite questions right now. What if we can create artificial meat to stop pollution from animal farms? And we see with Beyond Meat or Impossible Meat that there's two organizations, two startups that are currently trying to solve this question. Or what if we can launch a rocket and land the first stage safely on the planet to refuel it in 24 hours and make space travel accessible to all? We see many rockets are leaving at the moment, this planet. And SpaceX is one of those that are trying to land the rocket safely again to refuel it in 24 hours. What if you could build the most experienced driver in the world? This is Waymo, our autonomous driving efforts. What if we accelerate the global transition to sustainable energy? That is Tesla. With big letters, they have this mission statement in Fremont here on their factory. What if we don't produce any more garbage? A zero waste initiative that is happening around the world helps really every individual to try to think how they can reduce their individual waste. At Stanford, a couple of years ago, we asked ourselves about the future of education. And we asked that question, what if students explained missions instead of majors? What if anything can be made out of old plastic? That's a question we ask ourselves at Google X. Or what if we can turn seawater into fuel? That's Project Foghorn at X. And just as Google announced probably 24 hours ago, what if technology could help the environment? And with, for example, Google Cloud technology, that is now carbon neutral. We want to achieve carbon-free energy around the clock in all of our data centers by 2030. What if we can grow a building from a seed? Or what if people, everyone, grew their own food? Like you probably experimented with it during the pandemic, like our search trends actually show us. So let's ask those questions, those what if questions. So think about one what if question that you're interested to explore that creates that uncomfortable excitement within you. And please put that in the comments right here. If you're sitting in the audience, I want you to actually take your smartphone. So take your phone and open up your email client and go on compose to compose an email. The subject is pretty simple. It's what if. The email should consist of a question you want to ask. So I'm going to do that too. Now the most interesting thing, who you're going to send this email to. So choose a person that you probably haven't connected with over the last 18 months. A person that, you want to reconnect. Person that could be a colleague, it could be a friend, it could be a family member, could be anyone. And just have that courage for a moment to send that what if question to that person right now. So if you hit send, you probably experience that slight feeling, that uncomfortable feeling around what will they answer? Will they laugh about my question? Will they ask, are you serious? I've done that many times in the past months, and I was always surprised what responses I got. People responded with a yes and. They were engaged. They felt that this is a great provocation. This is probably a future vision we should move towards. But we need to be open with our questions, like you just demonstrated. And thanks for asking those questions also in the comment functionality. Obviously, I can't see your emails you've sent, but thanks for doing that as well. But questions like, what if there were no country borders? What if we did not work so many days a week? Thanks, Inka, for asking that question. What if you could make cost-free transport? What if we would work together instead of competing? Thanks, Jonas, for asking that beautiful question. And all of those questions, they should create that feeling of uncomfortable excitement. But also, it creates openness that you've just practiced in the most impressive form. Because it was like a little risky, maybe, but hopefully meaningful to send that question to someone else through an email, or to actually put this question out here so that everybody can read it. But if we keep those questions to ourselves, nothing will happen. So we have to share it with one another. We have to share it with the world. And an open mindset helps us with this. So I believe that everyone is able to have great ideas and that creativity exists in all of us. Creativity makes us human. Creative thinking is more important today than ever. But for most people, it's locked up. Most people lack the confidence to put their ideas into practice, with the courage to do something with those ideas and turn an unsatisfactory situation into a preferred one. But innovative ideas can only grow and flourish in an optimistic culture that encourages and celebrates creative thinking and risk-taking, and gives people the permission to share and achieve the most ambitious dreams. And it starts with you, who share the questions and dreams, the what-if questions. And it's beautiful to see how these questions, when you openly share those with each other, inspire others to maybe start doing something different, to maybe help them to think about solutions to those questions and start acting. But there's more, because maybe the person who just received your email, they tap into their negativity bias and think about reasons why this is not a great question to ask. It's the yes buts that we usually respond with, where we say, yeah, this sounds like an interesting question, but I don't have time to solve that right now. I don't think it's the most interesting question we should focus on right now. Or we find all these reasons why this is not a question we should actually follow. And that's just a natural response that we have, our animal brain that usually responds in the first seconds to a provocation or a situation that usually tries to save us and reduce the risks, usually takes over. But the next time you hear a great idea or a what-if question, just check your answer, because there's two strong words that can actually fuel optimism. And we usually just have to replace one word from a yes but to a yes and. And that's a very powerful response, because then you're actually not just contributing to this idea or question, but you're building on it. You make it bigger, better, and even stronger. You're now part of it. But you might ask, what happens to all of these great ideas we've made? We have to start experimenting and testing them to understand what works and what doesn't. And that's an experimental way of thinking. That's a mindset you can actually practice and train yourself in as well. One that tries and tries over and over again to eventually learn. And we all showed how we can experiment and try something different in the last 18 months. The pandemic has sparked a myriad of experiments. Everyone has experimented with their home office. You probably ordered food and other things online. We all took a different vacation for sure, and certainly celebrated a different birthday. We can fail on this path. That's good. So we know that we are crossing the limits, but above all, we are learning. And the path to success is paved with experiments. And during the current pandemic, we are seeing an unprecedented rate of experimentation. From your school teacher experimented with online education to your favorite restaurant sending our orders to go, to our governments trying to reduce the spread of a virus. And we all work and study from anywhere. Probably the greatest experiment in the history of professional work. And we all learn. But it's not easy to start experimenting, because we have to leave our familiar path and try out new and different things. We have to get off autopilot, as I mentioned in the beginning. And that's not easy. But when we work in teams in our organizations, we know that we can create an environment in which people feel safe enough to try things. And at Google, we did research to understand what's the difference between a successful, productive, and an innovative team and a less successful, less productive, less innovative team. And like all good researchers, we at Google had a hypothesis. And we thought that having the right mix of individual skills is the most important aspect of a great team. However, since we thought like scientists, we were open-minded and ready to follow the truth wherever it took us. And we found that our hypothesis was wrong. Instead, after examining over 280 teams in 2 years, we found that team members' interactions was much more important. So how people work together. So the key factor in the team's effectiveness was psychological safety, where the team member felt safe to take risks and being vulnerable in front of teammates. And it turns out that employees who work in teams with high levels of psychological security and safety are more likely to be more effective and productive, and eventually more innovative. And it starts with you. So ask yourself, how can you build a more inclusive, psychologically safe team environment? Perhaps in your next team meeting, you will start sharing something that you've tried, you've learned, or even a mistake. Speaking of trying, we can all develop a mindset that allows us to experiment safely or take even more risks. And we can learn from nature. Some time ago, I was on a trip through Patagonia on a ship called the Entrepreneur Ship with students from Chile and Stanford. And we were watching penguins, and we were discovering something fascinating. So if you watch penguins, there's always a penguin who first jumps out of the ice shelf or off the ice shelf into the water. That's the brave penguin or the courageous penguin. And when a penguin jumps into the water, it has probably a 50% chance of finding food or a 50% chance of being eaten. And you all know what happens if no one jumps into the water and no one comes back with food. The whole colony actually dies. So at Google, I created the Penguin Award, which is given to the person who takes a risk and then shares their insights and learnings with team members. And I'm sure you have a brave penguin, a courageous penguin, that you want to reward and recognize in your organization too. One of the most important ways of thinking for me right now is empathy. It's one of the future skill sets that I think is most important. The ability to change your perspective, to see and hear and feel what others are feeling. It's about understanding how others feel and being compassionate with them. And research has shown that empathy makes people better leaders, managers, and workers, as well as better family members and even friends. But it's bigger than just personal impact. We are all in this together. And researchers say connection and compassion are critical to a sustainable and humane future. So practice empathy. Talk to new people. Try the life of another person. Don't just slip into someone else's shoes, as the saying goes, but walk in them. As in a project in our accessibility team, we try to empathize with people who can neither see or hear and how they interact with technology. And technologies such as the Google Assistant or voice-to-text speech recognition made great strides here. And by developing for some specific needs, everyone now can benefit from these technologies. And now our Google Assistant can read and translate text for you in real time. So humanity has changed for the better in the last few months. And people start to develop their future mentality. And this is great. Like you demonstrated today here with the optimism you shared, the future-looking questions you provided, but also the what-if questions that you openly shared with each other. That little risk that you took today to share it with someone that you probably haven't heard of in a while, but now you're reconnecting with. Not with an answer, but with a question. Every crisis, the floods in Germany, the forest fires here in California, racial injustices worldwide, and climate change for sure, and not the least, the pandemic. All of these crises create new opportunities. And these possibilities are right in front of us. We just have to discover and create a better future out of them. And it starts with our mindset, our attitudes, and how we approach these challenges. So let's use our innovation mindset, our creativity, to tackle these challenges that are right in front of us. Thank you, and see you in the future.
Thank you so much, Frederick, for these insights and the deep look into the human mindset for creativity and innovation. Thanks so much, and we'll be back in 5 minutes right here.